Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of GQ. This is Second Perspective. My name is Paul Weston, and over there is Mitchell Allen. And this is a discussion for The Walk. It's starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And if you have not seen the film, this is where we talk about spoilers. So stop now. Go see the film. Although to be perfectly honest,
guys, spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, he walks.
Yeah. To give a really kind of quick synopsis on the view, basically, and it'll kind of sort of lead on what we talk about here. We thought the ending had some merit to it, but largely the tonal issues for me and just about everything else for Mitch just kind of sank this movie for us. We had a lot of issues for it. And the thing that sort of dampens it even more is the fact that apparently the documentary is, which I haven't seen but Mitch has, so he can speak to it, is like infinitely better. So like to make a film like this, you have to like have a very clear reason or idea that will either supplement the documentary or like bring something new to the film. And I think it just doesn't. And I guess, actually that's probably a good way to like lead this discussion, okay, so right? Like,
sure.
I haven't seen the documentary, and I can already tell that I can tell why this would be a great documentary. The guy's still alive. They had all this good information, and the parts that are missing and the parts that I really want to know about, they could have just told me in the documentary, but in the film they had to do like this weird haphazard kind of way of trying to add this information while making it seem natural, and it just I don't know, like do you have some quick thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think this is something you could probably figure out. Like my parents sort of, that like when they saw the movie they had seen the documentary but like they had forgotten about it, so it was basically like just watching it again for the first time. And the first like impression, like it was actually interesting the way Mom had said this to me, is like she said this movie felt like a circus, and I was like, okay, that sounds interesting.
I agree with that thought, actually.
And then I went to go see it, and it's like, oh, it's a circus, but everyone is bad at their job. So it's just a mess where the animals are running through and the clowns are like coming on at the wrong time and throwing stuff at your face. I think what he is trying to do is he actually is bringing something new, where like the documentary is shaped like it's more cinematic than like a lot of documentaries could be. Like I think a lot of documentaries are very cinematic, and it's a whole discussion to get into.
Well, I mean, what do you mean like cinematic?
This one in particular is a cinematic like thriller, but it's about a real thing. But the way that the movie is structured, that movie, is that it's like done as a tightly wound like suspense thriller where you're waiting to see whether they'll actually do what they're supposed to do. And so it goes back and forth with some of the information, but a lot of it is just recreating the feeling of waiting to be caught or waiting to like do whatever they're trying to do and being caught up in that heist zone. And this movie, I think what it tries to do is it dramatizes Philippe Petit's life, which is sort of, I guess, more like idealistic and hopeful, but it's done in like a whimsical, like over the top, ecstatic fashion. So everything in the movie is just over the top. Like the narration is him standing in front of the Statue of Liberty in a CGI Statue of Liberty. Then it goes to this sequence that's black and white, but then it does this like Schindler's List thing where like some of the colors pop and then some don't. And it's just like, everything is supposed to be over the top. I get that.
Okay, here's my question.
But why?
Oh no, go for it. You finish your thought first.
Sure. So, I mean, the only thing I could think of that the reason why he had everything over the top is because maybe the act of walking between those twin towers is so crazy that he wanted everything else in his life to feel so crazy for it to make sense that he'd want to do this singular thing. But the act of walking on the wire is not that crazy. It's just a bold, artistic move to display like the most of yourself on this very dangerous, teetering platform. And I don't think making everything a circus is helping you communicate that properly.
To be honest, I don't totally understand what it means that it's like an artistic or like a bold artistic move to walk along the wire and stuff. And like we can talk about that later.
Sure, yeah.
But like I don't mind. Like, okay, this dude wants to go walk on wire and it's crazy, but I maybe I'm just around enough crazy people that I go, some people have a dream and they want to challenge themselves or whatever. I could rationalize that. It's just the tone. I literally wanted to roll my eyes like every 60 seconds. And if I want to roll my eyes and I just think it's like, oh my god, really? If I ask that every 60 seconds, how am I supposed to care about these people? Right? Like, the story itself is like screaming at me like, no, Paul, please care about me. And I'm like, I want to try. But it's just like, with Joseph Gordon-Levitt and he's like, I mean, I wasn't as bothered by his accent, but like, it was not the shining star of this film. But like the tone, like literally, I like people are getting like I take notes, right? Like in the theater, I literally have cheesy written every like what five or six lines. It's just ridiculous. I can't take a film if I can't take a film seriously, then it loses any thematic goal that you have is totally lost, right? And like I'm fine with things being over the top. Like I watch anime, I watch all sorts of silly stuff. I don't necessarily
silly can work. It's just you have to have. I don't know. Maybe it is just taste, and maybe it is just we don't like the kind of goofy that he's putting forward, but some other people do. But there's just something so artificial about it. Like
it just feels totally
genuine.
off.
Yeah,
it feels. I think the big thing is just it feels. It's like I don't know that you're like wanted to like it's like the story of Romeo and Juliet, and then you tell me you want to make it as like a romantic comedy, where like nobody, spoiler, where nobody dies. You're like,
oh no!
But like, and I'd be very surprised if someone hasn't seen or know what happens to Romeo and Juliet. But anyways, where it's like it just feels, and hopefully I hope through this discussion I can sort of articulate why I feel this way, but it just feels like he made a decision and it was more for show than what it actually helped tell the story more clearly. I don't know. There's something totally off for me and I don't understand it necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, what did you think, like, because I think part of the two main problems with, besides like the tone and just like how over the top everything is, like for me the two biggest issues are the dialogue and either the casting or the way that he's working with his actors, because I think there's a way to pull off camp, but the way that he's doing it is either like crowd pleasing or irritating, and it's a sweet spot in the middle where like every line is meant to set up something very specific. Like early on, like you'll go to Ben Kingsley, which is, by the way, like maybe one of the worst things I've seen Ben Kingsley do, besides pee in front of Mike Myers in The Love Guru. That's infinitely worse. So it's pretty bad. And yeah, Ben Kingsley is just he'll go up to him and I think it's around the middle of the movie and be like, I need to perfect this dream. Also, I'm doing a better French accent than just does this movie. I need to achieve this dream of walking between the walls. And then Ben Kingsley's like, oh, you're crazy, but you know what? When I was a boy, I also dreamed big, and I get it. And I want you to have all this money, and it will symbolize like everything that happens to you and your payment to me in spirit. And it like never leaves anything to, subtext. It's all just like, let's move this forward and let's be as clear as possible. And
I guess for a story that's real, and I think that's where most of its power comes from, because like it literally goes like, I think it says The Walk, and then like its very next frame is a true story.
Yeah,
right?
first of all, a true story, and I mean, do I know the true story? No. Do I feel like they made a couple things up in this movie for pure narrative effect and for nothing else? Absolutely. It doesn't fool you at all.
I can't believe I can believe one character being a little bit strange or whatever, but I felt like I was watching like a sitcom or something.
It is like a bad either sitcom or melodrama. What did you think? Actually, I was curious about this because this is something that in the documentary is like a little more layered. And one of actually the things towards the end that I wasn't as disappointed with. But what did you think of his love interest and the way they like handled that? Because that I feel like the way they handle that is also problematic.
Yeah, with that scene, it just, I don't know, it just felt super Hollywood, where it's like, you're annoying, but you won't go away. Your persistence is kind of cute. Hey, let's make out.
Oh, like when the meet cute, like the first one.
Yeah, like it's like that's literally like cookie cutter Hollywood, and it just sort of like I already rolled my eyes once from like stupid juggling, and then it was like about 30 seconds later they did that, and I was just, I don't know. I mean, with the end where she says like, okay, you found your goal, your dream, now I need to find mine. I thought that was interesting, and I thought that was a lot better than. Oh, it was not what I expected, and it left me with something to think about, which is nice because I feel like the actual story itself has a lot to work with. I mean, like they made that documentary, right? But yeah, it's just for most of it, it was just sort of like she loves him because we need her to, and it's like, all right, I guess.
No, it's like the classic. Yeah, for me, it was the classic up until that moment you were talking about, which I actually is, I think, the realistic part of that relationship. That she has all these dreams and she's not really allowed to achieve them because she's fixed to working with Philip. But for the most part, she's like this. In the theory of everything, there's the same problem where it's Stephen Hawking's wife and she's studying faith.
Without ruining anything.
Yeah, sorry. Anyway, she like has she has a certain goal. I'll put it this way: there's always this narrative of like a wife who has a certain goal and meets a guy, and they get married, and then the husband's goal consumes both of them. And that is a common Hollywood narrative that just doesn't feel realistic. Or if it is maybe a real thing that happened, it's not dealt with. It's just sort of left as of course.
I feel like if some of that might actually be true. But a lot of these narratives, because I know what you're talking about, they're not given sort of their own something to make it original, or not even original, but just sort of to stamp it with its sort of own individuality, right? Like there's got to be a very particular aspect or spirit of their own problems, right? Like you can say that every relationship has problems, and every relationship has these. Has this kind of problem, or like the guy's never home, or blah 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 blah. But there's always, in every relationship, there's always a certain color to it that makes it personal, right? And like with a true story, and both in Stephen Hawking's, which I haven't seen that movie, and in this movie, I'm sure there are very, very clear aspects of their relationships that make it, that has its own sort of individual features in its problems, right? Like I feel like they kind of sort of touched on it with Joseph Gordon-Levitt smacking on his coffin.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, man, and the problem is they do the exact same scene like for a little bit in the documentary, and it's just like that is the contrast. Like if you look at that scene in the documentary and then that scene in this movie, you can just see like the difference in craft and how poor this is because it's so. That scene is like maybe one of the worst.
I feel like it's a documentary. If you've seen this film, you know how it happens. So I'm kind of curious if you're able to sort of like talk about the differences.
Flesh out. Yeah, sure. So part of the interesting thing about the movie, the Men on Wire, is that they don't have footage of the walk itself. They have pictures and they have footage of other walks that he did on smaller buildings, but they don't have anything where he's walking in between. So my thing is that the director probably saw that this was the case and wanted to kind of make a movie about the walk and immerse yourselves in that. But the problem is what he doesn't find is a great take on the first part, which is the build-up. And what the documentary does really well is it focuses on every detail of what went wrong during the planning, or which members were more into it and which members had legitimate reasons maybe not to be so inspired by Philippe, but still follow along anyway. And it goes also to show a little bit more.
Well, I mean,
it's not also, this movie focuses more on Petit's childhood at one point, and Man on Wire is mostly just about how he gets everyone together.
I was sort of getting curious on your thoughts on like that, because you brought up the scene specifically, like the coffin scene. So I'm kind of curious if, like you said, like it's well crafted in the documentary and it's not here. So I was kind of curious on your thoughts on that. But before you go on that,
okay,
you do bring up a good point with the childhood thing, and like that's sort of another one of my issues. It's just like where I say it's like it's a scene that I've seen from every other Hollywood film where it's like the father doesn't like the son because the son is doing something that they don't like, and it's just sort of like how am I supposed to resonate with this?
How are we supposed to believe that this is a real story and not a total invention, even if it is true? Like the way that they write it is just makes it feel like they've conjured it out of thin air. Well, the worst is, and it's a line that, again, probably taken directly from the novel and feels like nonsense, is the carrots are cooked line. And it's a line that obviously signifies that, like, you know, I'm done with you, or whatever it may be, or the deal is done. But when they say it, it just sounds like a Forrest Gumpian, like, life is like a box of chocolates idea that they're trying to throw out there, and then it just doesn't land at all. It just it sounds.
You guys like it?
You get it? I know, and it's not that clear. Actually, the only part of the carrots are cooked thing that's interesting, and they end up ruining it, is later on in the movie. They're in the room with all of the collaborators, and then Philippe Petit walks out and he goes, "The carrots are cooked. Like, we're doing this." And then Ben Schwartz, who is, again, in 30 seconds, but is the best part by far, just sort of sits there and is like, "What? The carrots are cooked?" And a good movie would have probably just sat with that and then continued on to the next conversation. But this movie has so much exposition that it feels the need to have another character say, well, in his country, the carrots are cooked was a metaphor for this thing. And once the carrots are cooked, it meant that it was done. And that's why he said that, which is essentially like the biggest buzzkill. But that's what it is. It's just there's so much exposition in the movie that it kills any sense of wonder, except for the 20 minutes. I don't know if you want to get to that now or go back to the coffee question.
I feel like we've kind of just gone like, I don't understand. Why do you do this? This doesn't make sense. So like, let's get to the walk.
Sure.
What I know that I was less enthused. I mean, like I still thought it was fairly nice, but it was a little bit less enthused. So why don't you sort of tell me how and why you resonated with the last 20 minutes or so with the walk?
Yeah, sure. For one, and it's probably a simplistic answer, but like they don't talk as much. And because one of the weaknesses of this movie for me primarily is the dialogue, it legitimately does help that the only thing you're seeing is him on the wire, and he's not having a conversation with someone. He's not yelling across the buildings. He's just taking a moment, like the movie is taking a moment, to put you there, and every like step that he's doing is precarious, and you can sort of analyze like what his next move is going to be. And there's something more visually fascinating about the process of getting from one side and then all of a sudden deciding he's just going to turn around and do it again. Then all of a sudden deciding, hey, guess what? I'm not going to leave the wire.
Yeah, I think...
And it's interesting to watch him do that. Even if there is a little bit too much narration, it's still more suspenseful and more interesting. So on that level, I think that's what it was. And then it's also just an impulse thing where I watched it and I actually felt emotional watching him like salute the buildings and you know, him among the clouds and the fog going past. It just felt
that was probably my favorite part, honestly. What's
it
the
just
thought?
felt more serene and, like, dare I say it, spiritual. Like, I'm not a spiritual person, but that's the closest I think I could get in terms of that. If I was ever up on a building in between two towers and the whole world was beside me and there was nothing else besides a thin cable separating me from the rest of everything. It's just such an interesting, fascinating experience that I think really was conveyed well in those 20 minutes.
Well,
except for when the cops come in and they're all New York accents. You're like, hey, guys, you crazy kids, get off the Y, you stupid idiots. It's the worst.
I think you
know,
were honestly. I think you made a really good point. It was just they stopped talking, and like the director was kind of forced to use the camera as a tool, and like it almost like I would have to go back and think about it a little bit more. But maybe you're onto something there, where it's just the director sort of naturally fell back to explain everything and using all the writing, and never had to use the other tools at his sort of beside him to kind of have to get us to feel things and to sort of display different things. Because the two times when I cared about Philippe was when they were underneath the sheet and they had to wait for the guard, and it was mostly silent. And even then, that was the one time where the voiceover was kind of okay. It was just like, we had to wait there, blah blah blah, and it goes, and I think my favorite part of the film was when they were dealing with the heavy boots, right?
Yeah,
like that, and then it showed him showing some compassion for somebody else, and him shaking. And they fucking it deserves an F word. They ruined it with like the when he looked at him, Joseph Gordon looked at him, and then all of a sudden he had that like and he started like falling, or I think Paul or someone like started falling down the elevator shaft.
Oh yeah. That's right. No.
What? Yeah. It was actually kind of interesting because usually they say like and I usually even say on the show like show don't tell, but somehow they totally fucked that up too. Like anytime they showed something, like they showed the dove or the no, sorry, not what was it? Not a.
It was it a dove or a pigeon? That's I can't
a bird.
Remember. It was a bird. It was a bird.
A white bird.
It was a bird. It was actually, and considering the guy's extensive experience with CGI, a terrible looking CGI bird.
Yeah.
Also, not only that, like the moment itself was like interesting, like the bird appears and it like swoops past him, but the fact that the narration has to be like, and this bird appeared, he was like a warning sign from heaven that maybe I should turn around. I'm like, just let the bird swoop in front of you, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, like do you think it comes from sort of an insecurity that the audience won't sort of appreciate the emotional magnitude?
Yeah, I think it's a Hollywood problem, to be honest. I think it's let's figure out how to make this movie for a mass market. And I think that Zemeckis, over many years, in movies like Beowulf and like Polar Express and even Castaway to a certain effect, is like, I think really focused on making like a crowd pleasing movie without focusing on the essentials of like what the like narrative actually needs. So I think sorry, what was the question? I'm just trying to figure out what I was doing this. Yeah.
I asked if you think it was sort of an insecurity of the filmmaker.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that like he gets big budget name stars instead of getting like authentic French actors or whatever it may be to portray it. He gets like narration and expository dialogue because I don't think he trusts that the audience will just come to this film because of how interesting the story is. There has to be something else that will draw, like a circus trick. Again, it comes back to this whole circus thing. It's like just showmanship.
Yeah,
but too much.
I think ultimately the metaphor that I have in my head, the visual metaphor for this film, is that like it's this kid that's got a really pretty interesting like trick or art piece or whatever they've done, but the kid's like in my face going, come see it, hey, look at me, and it's just sort of like, kid, just do your thing and I'll watch. And like
I know, right?
It's already interesting. Like you don't have to like, it's just like if the kid's terrified I'm not going to be his friend or something. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're making it worse by doing this. Like,
Yeah, it was interesting about the documentary is that it trusts the story is interesting enough, and trust me, the story really is interesting enough that when it tells you something about like the coffin, like the way it's explained is like as a dream sequence, and like his voice is excited, but he's like excited to share it with you rather than he wants you to know, he wants you to be there. He's like he wants you to join along with him in the documentary, which I think is better.
It's this whole acting director thing, which we learn with like verbs and stuff, and it's there's a difference between, you know, as you said, someone being excited, and then there's another thing like when someone's trying to excite you. But the problem is like when someone tries to excite you, almost always our response naturally as people is like
revulsion, right?
like it's like naturally back up, and it's just we don't need that. Like if the story focused on itself and trying to like sort of understand the narrative as best it can and like trying to make them feel things as best as they could, then I think I would have had a much better experience than all this like artistic energy being external, being like please care, right? And it's just it's that sort of almost. I think honestly, you know what, I think that's what it was. It's just. All that the tonal stuff and everything that made me roll my eyes. It's just it felt like the film and the filmmakers and all that stuff were being like, please care, please care. When like if I see people, filmmakers, actors doing their craft and caring about it anyways and not worrying so much about how I feel, naturally it becomes more interesting, right? And it's just that's often I think that's usually what the issue is with most. Films, right? And I'm not
it's
sure.
Also just I mean, it's also not only is it like trying to get you to be involved because it wants you to have fun, it also wants you to know that it's important. And especially there's one line at the end, like right after the walk scene happens, and I'm like really satisfied with it. And then they're in this restaurant and they walk out and they look up at the towers and they're like, you know what? You made those towers come alive. You did that for the people, and everyone will really thank you for that. And I'm like, there's no way that discussion happened because they are the biggest dicks in the world and they said that happened. But also, it's just like it's delivered in such a cliche, like stock way that you can't ever like you all of a sudden, your reaction is to go, no, he didn't make them important. That's a lie. That's absolutely a giant lie that you just told me to make it seem like he's the best person in the world. But I think maybe it's true. It's just presented in such a self-congratulatory way. It's hard to take seriously.
I think in the end, I can kind of sum up the most of this conversation, or at least the second half that we had, with the whole thing from a line from Game of Thrones, actually, in terms of where like how we said like the film was saying like, hey, look, we're interesting, we're important, all that sort of stuff. It said. Someone that says that I am the king, I have the power. Okay. So, interesting. That was something weird out my window. But anyways, something.
Okay. Sure.
Someone that says that I am the king, I have the power, has no power, right? I didn't say that line exactly, but as soon as you have to say, I am important. You're not. You don't have the power. You're not important. There's very clearly. Some party that says, that sort of thing. So, other than that, I
have one more quick question.
Yeah, it's
about the Twin Towers ending that they do at the end. It's very specifically like meant to reference like the fact that they're no longer there.
Yeah.
I was wondering what your feeling on that was, because I couldn't tell if I was okay with it or if it was like one more little like manipulative thing. I don't know. It was right in the middle of that. What did you think?
My face in the 10, 15 seconds you're talking. I literally, when you're doing that, I remember kind of going, like if, I'll just say that like if this film were a lot better, I'd probably be much more okay with it.
Yeah. So
I'm not sure what that means. But with sort of how cringy and eye-rolly this film is for me, I don't give them the benefit of the doubt on that. I don't know. I don't know, and like I didn't know what it brought thematically either. Like, because I felt like being all like patriotic, like towers, and I'm
I
just
think
sort of
the
like
only
it felt like thematically
also
disconnected.
I know.
Sorry, go for it.
Well, I think the only thing that it sort of did bring forward is like the only thematic base that actually it's a pretty clear thematic base. It's just done poorly, but the fact that humans continue to persevere and continue onwards despite great obstacles. The problem is you're still equating. I know. Now that I think about it, you're still equating a man walking on a wire for a work of art and a nice piece of performance art to a horrible tragedy, and it's dicey for sure. It's dicey. The good thing the documentary doesn't do is doesn't hammer that in at all. You almost like
I just think if they really wanted to say that, they could have done that in like 10 million different ways.
Oh man,
and avoiding that thing, which naturally most people have a very visceral reaction to anyway. So like, there's not even like if there was like a huge payoff, they're like, if this worked, it would have been a fantastic moment. I don't even think like the ceiling on that moment wouldn't have been very good in the first place. So
right.
I don't even think it worked, and I don't even think it was worth taking the risk in the first place. Because I don't mind a filmmaker taking a risk, being like, this might blow up in my face, and I'm like, that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't even think the actual ceiling.
That's fair.
But yeah, do you have any parting thoughts before we say goodbye to the internet?
Yeah, I thought his love interest was Winona Ryder for the entire film. And then I was like, man, Winona Ryder has a really bad French accent too. And then I looked it up and it's like someone else. And I was like, I'm so sorry. You were actually French. I'm so sorry that I thought that.
Good Lord. Well,
I know. That just wasn't
I appreciate knowing that. Anyways, if you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching us. Mitch and I will be doing another video shortly. It might be Porn Sacrifice. It might be The Martian. It might be all sorts of different stuff.
Nice.
We've been watching a lot of films. We're trying to make this. We're trying to put some good time into it to, get good at it. Anyways, I think
we can be right.
Yeah, as best we can be. Again, this is Second Perspective. I'm Paul Weston, and over there is Mitch Allen. And thanks for watching. Take care, guys.